So before I start the class today, there were few people who left this earth this last couple of days. One everybody knows Kamlaji's father-in-law, and two of my cousins, one cousin's sister's husband passed away yesterday, and my own cousin, my Tauji's son. So it's pretty sad news, but anyway, it's one of those things, you know, life and death go together. But I just wanted, in their honor, I just wanted to do Trayambakam mantra 5 times. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamritat. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityormukshiyamamritat. भगवान उनकी आत्मा को शांति दे. ओम शांति 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 ही. हरि ओम. I'm going to start the class. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. So, we are at a section where Krishna Bhagavan is describing the state of Samadhi, merging with the highest. And we started, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 verses which go together because they are describing in more detail that state, what we should be looking forward to, and some of the things you may be already experiencing. And one of them we already did it last time. So we're going to start with 21. And the one that we already did last time, the English translation is, that's verse 20 of chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. When the mind, restrained by the practice of yoga, attains quietude, and when seeing the self by the self, he is satisfied in his own self. Means his mind is not running anywhere else. That's what basically is telling you in meditation. So let's see what now verse 21 that we're going to do today, what it says. I'm going to chant the verse. Sukham atyantikam yaddat buddhi grayam atindriyam veti yatra na chaivayam stitaschalati tatvatah. Sukham is bliss. Atyantikam means athyadik, but here the connotation is infinite. Infinite sukham. Yat, which. Tat is that. Buddhi grayam, that which can be grasped by reason, but actually the real meaning is grasped by pure intellect, when the buddhi becomes very pure. Atindriyam, transcending the senses, means senses ke pare, beyond the senses. Veti is knows, yatra is where, na is not, cha and, eva means even, ayam is this, sthitaha means established in that. Chalati moves, tattvataha from the reality. It doesn't move from the reality, just established in that. So what are they saying over here? So basically they are saying that in that state of samadhi, nirvikalp samadhi, one experiences sukham or happiness or bliss. The right word may be bliss. Because when we say happiness, they sound like fleeting thing that we get it from our worldly sense contact with sense objects. So that they're not talking about that. It's a bliss. So what they're trying to say over here is that the bliss that we get from the self or Brahman is unconditional. Because let's compare it with what we get in the world. It's like joy and sorrow. So yahan par hai na, you get joy, but be sure that it's going to be followed by sorrow. And sometimes we know the same thing gives us joy and the same thing can give us sorrow also. So duality is there. So that's the problem in the worldly, the sense the joy that we get from the sense contact. That's the problem with it. So it always has an opposite in the world because it is in the duality, in the part of the dvandva, they call it in Sanskrit. Pain and pleasure, it's like a two sides of the same coin, basically, in the world. But in this, what the sukham or the bliss they are talking about, there is no opposite of it. So, it is like just pure sukham with no opposite. It's totally unconditional. And that's why the word is used as atyantikam. Means atyadhik means endless. Jiska koi seema hi na ho. So, basically, let's look at it, what they are saying over here. It's a little technical. So, in the world, I will say, I am happy. So, it's I and happiness is there. So, there's duality in that too. But what they are talking about it, you become happiness yourself. So, that's the difference. So, you become happiness yourself because you're merging with that bliss. It become one, like the river becoming the ocean. So you become the ocean only. And if it is Satchit Anand, then you become that Anand. So that's why there is a difference. So, Dilli Wale Swami, he gave Nikhilanandji, he gave an example, very beautiful example. It's like, okay, if I taste some sugar, say some mithai, it's sweet. So I am experiencing sweetness. But what if you become sugar yourself? It's kind of a crazy example, but it will give the point that what they're trying to say. Because sometimes we don't understand what do they mean by, in bliss and which is endless and all. We cannot grasp. So they're giving you some tips that what are we looking for over here. So then how does that, same way like that example we gave. Okay, I think Kamalaji has to mute here. The same example that we gave, same way we experience directly the sukh. There is no medium in between of the objects. Okay? So in the world, what happens? Today I'm happy, next day I'm unhappy. So I always remain different from that happiness in the worldly things because I'm depending on the worldly objects. But in the state of samadhi, because I become happiness myself, I'm not, what should I say? There is no limit to it because I am that. So it doesn't have a seema, it doesn't have a limit. And in the 17th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna Bhagavan talks about 3 different kinds of sukh that we can experience in the world. Tamasic sukh, Rajasic sukh, and Sattvic sukh. Okay? So, and then we won't go in detail right now because it's a big topic. When we come to that, we will do that. But this sukh, that what they are talking about, the bliss, is different from all 3. That's what we have to remember. And this particular sukh, Atyantikam Sukham, he's talked about in an 18th chapter, which is beyond the gunas. These are the 3 gunas they talk about, and that's why they say become gunatit, go beyond the gunas. That's what it is. So it is beyond. It's not anywhere, any of the 3 actually. And then another important thing that he talks about in this verse is, atindriyam. So it is which is not of the senses. So in that stillness and quietude and purity of the intellect. So those three things are required: stillness, quietude, and purity. That's where this bliss is experienced. So what Nikhilanandji was doing, he was giving a worldly example. He loves the example of sleep, actually, because that comes the closest to understanding this. That he's saying that suppose बहुत जोर से नींद आ रही हो, and you're trying to keep awake, but आती है जोर से नींद और एक झटका आता है नींद का, तो you get the glimpse of that deep sleep. So it's something like that. He said that it happens, but for that the intellect has to be pure, and that's where you will experience it. So if intellect is pure, not pure, then you won't experience that particular type of bliss. And then the other word used in this verse is buddhi grahyam. Grahyam means to catch something, kisi cheez ko pakadna. So it's caught by the buddhi. But here what they're talking about, pure buddhi. That is the most important thing. And that's why it is beyond the senses, because it is a pure buddhi or pure mind. That's the thing. And how do we experience this bliss? Because it is the nature of the self. So now he was talking about another example. I like the way Nikhilanandji explains, because then it goes deeper into us, that how does this happen actually? What is the mechanism of it? So he gives the example, which a lot of time in Vedanta, they use this example, that suppose there is a bright sunlight and there is a bucket of water, and water is absolutely pure and clean. It's not moving, it has no dirt in it. So now the sun is reflecting in that steady water, steady and clean water. The sun is reflecting. So the reflection is so beautiful that it almost looks like there is no difference between the sun and the reflection. It can be as bright, वो आँखों से देखा नहीं जाएगा, इतना same होएगा, just like you cannot see the real sun. So as though, now look at this example, is so brilliant, as though the pure water has caught the sun. See what they're talking about when they say that it is buddhi grahyam. That word, we are trying to open it up here. That it is as though caught by that pure water. Same way, pure intellect is the one that catches that pure joy of or bliss of the Atman. So he's saying that later, next stage of the samadhi will be that you get totally absorbed. You won't get the glimpse, but you are totally merged, and buddhi gets dissolved also. And then nobody even talks about me. The person becomes totally like, what should I say? He won't even speak anything. But this stage, what he's talking about, that a person goes into that turiya state, experiences that bliss, and comes back in the world to transact in the world. So that type of person is called Jivan Mukta. Because here in Bhagavad Gita, that Jivan Mukta is a very important thing. While you are living in the body, you become liberated. So that's why it's called Jivan Mukta. So such a Jivan Mukta, while living and experiencing, who has experienced the supreme joy with that purified intellect, that person, his mind and intellect is not going to move from it. What does it? It'll get absorbed in it in that state. What does that mean? I was trying to think of an example. It's like, suppose somebody is talking about Niagara Falls. And I create this image of Niagara Falls. It is like this, like that, but it's not the real image. It's just my imagination. But once I actually go and see it and experience it and go under the boat, wherever they take you, and feel it and all that, after that, when I come back, that experience will never go away from me. Nobody can shake it. I will never move away from there. Somebody might say, "Arey ye wo to aisa tha, waisa tha." I've already experienced it. I don't need to hear from anybody and get kind of swayed in somebody else's direction. See what I'm saying? That's why this person, once he gets the experience himself, he does not move away from that state. That's what this verse is telling you. He's remained steady in it. So he does not get disturbed, from this state of realization, because here he knows now. So what Swamiji was saying is that you will have to put forth effort in meditation until you experience that joy. And it's like, hey, what is the goal? How long should I do it? That's what he's talking about, that until you get the joy. Krishna Bhagavan is very clearly describing that what that state should be. And he's saying that also another thing that happens is that it becomes effortless, because once you experience that bliss, your mind will automatically run to it. That's another very important thing, because he's saying what happened to mind right now? Our mind, it's running everywhere else, but and then what we have to do in meditation, we have discussed this in the class, right? In the early stages, my mind is running, I got to bring it back. Krishna Bhagavan also said, bring it back. But what they are talking about, this person, usko wo experience ho gaya hai, that's why his mind automatically runs to the self. He doesn't have to do any effort ki mere ko pakad ke lana padega. And then he said in Bhagavatam, everybody knows the Krishna Bhagavan and gopis, right? There are innumerable symbolism about it. And each one is a very good symbol. There are so many of them, and so many different saints and sages bring all kinds of symbolism. So one of the symbolism is that Krishna Bhagavan is that Atma, and the gopis are the mind. Now, mind is totally absorbed in Krishna. That's why unko kuch dikhai nahi deta hai aur. And so many stories are there, right? They can't see anything else but Krishna. So that's the symbolism over here in meditation, that the mind is totally devoted to that self. It runs to it. It doesn't want anything else. So, and once, obviously if you have tasted that joy, that's when you will not want any worldly joy anymore. It's not that you will discard the world. That's not what they're talking about, but the true detachment will come. Like Kamlaji was talking about the detachment when she had the Haman. The true detachment will come if you experience that, because then you already know that, hey, everything else is kind of, tamasic, rajasic, sattvic, sukh, and so you will, the summary of this whole verse is that this is the atyantikam sukham, which is beyond the gunas. And one who has attained this state of happiness will not move from it, become steady, and will not get disturbed. That's what they're talking about in this. Any other point anybody wants to say on any question or comment? Because in this, what we're going to do is, before reading, I'm going to go to one more verse, because the commentary is all together. Okay, so I'm assuming there is no question, right? Okay. So I'm going to go to the next one then. That's verse 22 of chapter 6. Yam labdhva chaparam labham manyate nadhikam tatah yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate yasmin sthito na dukkhena gurunapi vichalyate. Yam is which, labdhva, having obtained, cha is and, aparam, other, labham, we all know, gain, manyate, thinks, na is not, adhikam, greater, tata, then that, yasmin, in which, sthitaha, established, na is not, dukkhena, by sorrow, guruna, heavy sorrow. Api is even, vichalyate is moved. This is very, very significant verse, if you ask me. I like this verse a lot. It gives us a lot of hope, and you will see what he's saying. So basically now, having attained that state of realization of Turiya Avastha and Samadhi, first one thing is going to happen is, one will know that there is nothing greater than this. Okay? Nothing, 1 second. Yeah. Nothing greater than this. And then that this is the ultimate and final thing. The final goal that they talk about. We're always talking about what is the final goal of life. So this is what this person will know it now, because in the worldly sense, whatever we do, we are trying to gain some more happiness, more peace, more quietude. And if this is the endless happiness, bliss, and quietude you get, that's when you realize, okay, I have reached my final goal. So then how to understand this state? Again, Nikhilananji is a master of giving beautiful examples. So he gave an example of a circle. The circle, there has a center point in circle. Every circle has it. And that center point is only one point. If you go away from it, you can have millions of other points, right? But that center point is only one. So you can travel all over, but if you want to go to the center, the person decides that, hey, I just want the center only, suppose. So then he has to move towards the center, and he has to find that one point. And so now apply this example to Atma and the rest of the world. Atma is in that center, one point. Everything else is a world. So now you can see that everything else has so much variety. You can be here, there, everywhere. But that's not going to be called the center. So, and then when you are not everywhere else, you're never going to be satisfied. Because it's always in duality, always this, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, we don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that how we go up and down in one day also, So what we have to do, even if we get a little bit away from the center, if you want to be in center, you got to keep going back to the center. So that's the, analogy over here. I thought it was a brilliant analogy. So what happens in the world is, to fulfill our desire, we do this, do that, and in that process we end up collecting more desires. And then so again and again, endless cycle is going on going here and there. It never ends. Okay, because there are so many. Every object has a different name and form in the world. I mean, I don't know much about science, but my husband was telling me that there are like, I don't know how many 100 and some species of bats out there. We think that हम लोग सोचते bat is only one. मैं तो सुन के हैरान रह गए कि 120 species of bats are there. My God, how scientists are going to look at each one, I don't know. So here talk about variety, there is no end to it. And नए species भी आते रहते हैं. So that's why, so if you don't want all that jhamela, then what you have to do is go to the essence. And essence is only one. That's it. So he's encouraging you that, hey, this is what it is. So one who is interested into going in the essence, he's the one who's going to reach the goal, because he's going to be looking for it. Okay? And because संसार में तो कोई अंत ही नहीं है, difference का. And then another very important thing he mentioned, Nikhilananji, that one who reaches that self or experiences that final bliss, उसको कोई और proof की जरूरत नहीं है. Just the same example that I gave about, the, place, that once I see that place, I don't need anything else, So, and the one example that he gave, or one point that he gave, I should say, was a very good one, that he's saying if there is something other than me, then the proof is required. But this is my own nature. That's another very important point that we kind of miss it, that it's me only, that's why I don't need anything else to prove. And even in the worldly sense, hey, to prove that I exist, I don't need anybody else's approval, because I know I exist. You can say it that way too. Try to understand this point. And the same example about Niagara Falls, that once I see it, I don't need anything. So this person, he's also talked about the same thing in the previous verse, and these verses are all connected with each other, that once he reaches this self-realized state, ultimate state, he doesn't need to go anywhere else anymore. And he's saying in the world, kya hota hai ki in the scientific world also, there's a continuous change. They will make one theory and then they will add to it, and then it continuously goes on and on and on. And because science keeps on growing further and further, more and more knowledge is coming. So one day hopefully it will merge, science and spirituality will merge, because now they are trying to understand that, hey, there is something beyond the physical world, and they are accepting it, kind of. So then another very important point, he said that as you go subtler, science also, the quantum mechanics. Some of you might know a lot more about quantum mechanics. I don't know that much. I know a little bit. So he's saying that now they are also accepting this fact that between subject and object, we are the subject, each one is a subject, and there are millions of objects out there, relationship between subject and object. So he was saying that how in quantum mechanics now they understand the value of the subject, that without subject, objects don't mean anything. जैसे कि एक कहावत है हिंदी में, जंगल में मोर नाचा किसने देखा. Until you have somebody to recognize this universe, it doesn't have any meaning for anybody. So subject is very important, and that is what that Atma is, or Brahman is. And another very important point he brought, that who is seeing, that's again subject, of course. That is another way important, is that seer, how he sees it, that's what matters the most. Literally the structure can change of what I'm seeing. And just a very simple example, that you give a rock and you rock though, and then there are 4 different kinds of people, they will see 4 different kinds of things in the rock, right? So how the subject is so important. Scientists will see maybe a geologist will see कि ये rock कब आया, कितना पुराना है. A poet will see it, oh, this is the shape of this or something, whatever. So that's how the subject is so important. Because he said that in like olden times, they thought that the objects is a totally separate thing. That's not true. Object is directly related to subject, and that's what the Vedanta is saying anyway. So you cannot disregard the subject. Otherwise, you will never understand completely what the object is. That's the point he was trying to make. So, and then when you go deeper, this secret of secrets, and that's what Krishna Bhagavan is called, this Vidya, Brahma Vidya, the ultimate secret or the royal secret in chapter 9, he is called, that gets revealed. And then that's when in that samadhi, this person who has reached that state realizes that there is nothing greater gain than this. Completely reach that central point. Like he was talking about the center. So he said that one thing you have to remember in that example of the center, even if you are 1 point away from that center, you are away. How precise it has to be, So because, again, you can get lost into that other millions of points then if you are away. So that's what danger that he's just telling you. Okay. Another thing is, that's the part that I like the most about this verse. This verse says that जो उसमें establish हो जाता है उस center में और आत्मा में और समाधि में or experiences the joy, bliss, that person will not get disturbed even in the greatest sorrow. That was the most powerful thing. And in the verse he has used guru napi, the word dukkena guru napi. So what is guru napi means? Heavy. matlab, the worst kind of sorrow, the heaviest sorrow, sabse bada sorrow, he will not get disturbed by it. Imagine that state. I mean, so hard for us to imagine that state. But Krishna Bhagwan's promise is there, that this is what happens, because he's telling you that final state. But he also mentioned that in our country, where we come from, Bharat, there are so many Mahatmas. You have examples of them. Nothing fazed them. And there was, I think in the West also, there was one Mahatma in the West, jisko poison diya tha. I don't remember his name. And it says that he knew that he was dying, and he was just totally calm. And Jesus, another example. Usko sooli pe chada diya, or he's saying that, hey, I think that no better example can be Jesus' example. Sooli pe chada diya usko, and then he's saying, please forgive those people. They don't know what they're doing. He did not get disturbed. I mean, unbelievable. We cannot fathom that. But this verse is telling you that. So saying even in the face of death, they will remain free from their disturbance. No disturbance, no fear. Why? Because they are absorbed in a state which is itself indestructible. See that? That's the main thing. That they are in a state, because we have studied this state in chapter 2. जिसको वायु भी नहीं सुखा सकती, जिसको अग्नि नहीं जला सकती, पानी नहीं वेट कर सकता, nothing can destroy it. They are established in that indestructible state. That's why. So he's saying that, coming back to this fear, that fear is there because we think we are the body. We think that the world is very, very real. That's why the world problem happens, okay? And that's what causes, he's saying, sorrow and pain. When we think we are the body, world is real, and then all that. But जिसने recognize कर लिया कि I am the self, then that's why he becomes free. So he's absolutely at ease. So he's saying that we have learned, like Jagat Mithya, Brahma Satya, Jagat Mithya. We've heard of that. And then there is one doha in Ramcharitmanas. Shivji is talking to Parvati, and I still remember that line, because you will see that why I remember it. So Shivji is telling Parvati, Uma kahun main anubhav apna, sat hari bhajan jagat sab sapna. So he said jagat sab sapna hai. So he's saying that this world is like a dream, and the real self is, that state is different than that. That's what he has established in. So he's saying that the problem is that in the world, people love dreams. He's saying there are some people, कोई सपना देखते हैं ना, बोलते ओ मेरे को वो सपने में वापस जाना है, मेरे को वापस सोना है, चाहे वो सपना वापस आए या नहीं आए, लेकिन oh my God, the sapna was so beautiful that you get attached to your sapna only. He's saying, and some people don't even want to wake up because, oh my God, the dream was so great. Why did you wake me up, So he's saying that's the problem, because you're having too much fun in the sapna. And he's saying that some people, they also, he was joking that in the world, they like to live in an imaginary world. Even in this waking state, apni dunya mein rehna chahte hain wo log. So, and another thing he mentioned, that how that people put different masks on their personality. Some masks we already know. They are like, okay, my profession mask, I'm an engineer, I'm a doctor, I'm a scientist, or I'm nobody, whatever, And he's saying that then there are those panchakoshas are there. Because, Atma, you have to even go beyond those panchakosha. So, uske panchakosha ke pehle apne khub sare mask laga diye apne upar. Fir then we have to go all beyond all these things, And then he's saying that usually the interaction is between our images only. Those masks only are interacting with each other, The real one is not even interacting. So he was just reminding us of how we get caught into it, So after overcoming all these obstacles, one can gain that self-knowledge. And one who meditates, he gains that state of realization. This is a kind of summary now. And then that's the person who will experience that Turiya Avastha, Nirvikal Samadhi, and then he'll be called Jivan Mukta, and he won't get disturbed even in the heaviest sorrow. And this is the grand, great goal that we need to attain. That's what Krishna Bhagwan is telling. Okay. And so I'm going to just do these 2 verses today. And the last verse of this group is going to give a absolutely amazing another definition of yoga. What yoga is, that's what we will do it next time. So any question, comment, or anybody wants to add anything to all the explanations, these 2 verses?
Just one thing that I realized, all worldly joys require so many resources and so much effort. And this ultimate joy only requires your resolve, nothing else.
So beautifully put. And that's exactly what Krishna Bhagavan said in chapter 9. In the chapter 9, he started with that, it's like an advertisement of this Brahma Vidya he gave. So one of the things he said, you don't need any other instruments. क्योंकि यहाँ अगर इंजीनियर बनना है तो कितनी सारा तामझाम चाहिए, राइट? डॉक्टर बनना है तो माय गॉड, इसे ये वाली विद्या के लिए तुमको कुछ भी नहीं चाहिए. नो पैराफर्नेलिया रिक्वायर्ड. सो ट्रू, सो ट्रू. Just a firm resolve, like you said. Yeah. So what we can do is just so that it stays fresh in our mind. Anilji, maybe you can just read the English translation of the 2 verses you did, because the commentary we will read of Swamiji next time. But just the English translation of 21 and 22.
21 and 22 both.
Yes, yes.
When he, the yogi, feels that infinite bliss, which can be grasped by the pure intellect, and which transcends the senses, wherein established, he never moves from the reality. Number 22 is, which having obtained, he thinks that there is no other gain superior to it. Wherein established, he is not moved even by heavy sorrow.
Okay, so you saw that, when the yogi feels that infinite bliss, which can be grasped by the pure intellect. So we discussed all that, what the pure intellect, it is not grasped by the indriyas. That's a very important thing to know. Like you were saying, we don't need anything else. And which transcends the senses, is beyond the sense, same thing. Okay? Wherein established, he never moves from the reality, because now he knows, he's seen it. And the next one was, having obtained it, he thinks there is no other gain superior to it. There is no other superior to it, right? Because that's the ultimate goal. He realizes it, that is the ultimate goal. And usme establish, okay, he's not moved even by heavy sorrow. So, and I think that one of the settings of Bhagavad Gita is like that and the first chapter of it is like Arjun got into heavy sorrow. So here, because I would just, if you think about Arjun's dilemma, हम लोग का dilemma कुछ भी नहीं है उसके सामने. He had to kill his grandfather and the guru who he absolutely loved the most. Usse bura kya ho sakta hai, sorrow, right? But then he's telling him, and then also Arjun says this in beginning of chapter 2, that hey, even if you give me the kingdom of the 3 worlds, the sorrow that I feel in my senses, which are burning my senses, is not going to go away. So he was just so convinced that, oh my God, I'm going to be depressed like forever or something like that. So badly, he had a nervous breakdown. And Krishna Bhagavan told him, no, that's not true. So here he's telling him that, that if you get this, then you're not going to be even heaviest sorrow is not going to touch you.
And then one thing it also says, your mind has to attach itself to something.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So once you detach your mind from your senses, which bring you all kind of sorrows, then there is no sorrow because you have attached to self, which is just bliss only.
Yes. Yeah.
And that is the whole practice for God knows how long it takes.
Yes. There is a famous incident of Chinmayananji that it seems that he was a very revolutionary kind of person in those days, right? So it seems that one time he was going into a bus, and like literally unka ek paw bahar tha, ek paw andar, and one fellow kept screaming, Swamiji, if you have to tell in just one sentence what is Vedanta, what you will tell. So he says, detach, attach, and he got into the bus. That's a famous story of him. 2 words. So he's saying, detach from the world, attach to the higher. So that's exactly what it is, that what you said. So, and then the thing is that, hey, somebody might question that. One, you're telling to get detached, then why you're getting attached to something else? Koi pooch sakta hai, right? So the answer is, you are attaching to something which is infinite. That's why everything is अब छूट जाएगा. But अगर worldly चीज में हम लोग किसी चीज से attach करेंगे, तो बंध जाएंगे. It will be a bondage. So that's the difference. And that's why I like the way Krishna Bhagwan has explained the whole meditation technique, that, hey, meditate on the self. All those other type of sadhana, those are like okay in the beginning, but in the end, you have to graduate to that. Instead of some object and this and that, or some chakras and all that, that may be good and dandy in the beginning, but it's not going to take you to the infinity. You have to catch to the infinity to go to the infinity. So I think that's the difference I'm finding. And that's why I think whoever is interested in meditation must read this chapter in detail, because it will really clarify a lot of confusion. I don't think he could have done any better than he has covered everything. And we have not even finished the chapter yet. Abhi to aur bhi bahut kuch aayega. But,
In verse 23, he explains everything.
Yeah. It's like a dukkha sanyoga viyoga, If you read it already, and if you churn upon that, and that's exactly what detach attaches. Detach from what and attach to what. There's such a revolutionary definition of yoga. Dukkha sanyoga viyoga. Detachment from the contact with this pain and attaching to the higher. And if you see, the word is very contradictory, because yoga is to attach, but there is a detachment in it. And I think we had done this in Mandukya also. The similar concept was there. So is there any other question or comment anybody has on this? Okay, then I'm going to close Bhagavad Gita here. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tva sarva papebhyah mokshayishyami ma shuchah. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.